Welcome to Esoterica the podcast, where we discuss the obscure, offbeat, and unusual. I'm Chris Schultz.
And I'm Aaron Christian.
And we're back at you with a album discussion today.
Yes, we are. So this is an album I'm bringing to the table, but uniquely, this is something that, one, isn't a local group, and two, I actually haven't listened to all the way through completely. I've listened to bits and pieces, but I love the concept. I think it's interesting. I'm actually not a huge fan of the album, but I think it's something cool to listen to. So this week, we're listening to the 2018 release, Tranquility Base Hotel and Casino by Arctic Monkeys. It's a lounge pop, space pop, psychedelic pop kind of album. I didn't even know half of these were genres, to be honest, but it explores consumerism, politics, religion, and technology through the concept of a luxury resort on the moon, told from the perspective of various characters. So an interesting concept. This is a hotel on the moon.
Color me intrigued.
So this will be interesting. I just trying to pull up before we get into our first track who the perspective is from. Start Treatment. So Start Treatment is going to be the first track that we listen to on this album. And it is told from the perspective of the front man of the in-house band they have at the resort.
Interesting.
Without further ado, let's listen to Start Treatment.
I just wanted to be one of the Strokes. Now look at the mess you made me make. Hitchhiking with a monogram suitcase. Miles away from any half-useful imaginary highway. I'm a big name in deep space.
So there's a lot to unpack there.
There is a lot to unpack here. It's hard to break down, and
It's a very Bowie-esque, definitely.
certainly.
Sort of kind of reminded me of the Gorillaz bit.
Okay.
It might be the fact that there's this whole concept, or that this is a
Right.
band on a hotel on the moon is making me think of
Yeah.
Gorillaz, because it didn't necessarily sound like them. But
Yeah, and so trying to do a little retcon here and figure out what's going on with the song and the songwriting process. It seems like this is talking a lot about his songwriting process in general, or the influences and such. So it's interesting. It's an interesting track for sure.
and dreamy.
Dreamy.
I liked it. It's a good way to open up an album of this nature.
Yeah, I think one of the interviews I was just reading, this is the first song he wrote for the album, so it kind of sets the tone of like how the rest of it's going to be. Which, when I've listened to it before, like it definitely has a consistent tone to it, and it's a lot like this. But I wouldn't say it's exactly like this the whole time. There is some variety for sure.
It's like stepping into the foyer at Willy Wonka's Chocolate Factory.
Yeah, I feel like you could step into the foyer of a hotel like this is it. This is what it's like.
Yeah.
Cool. So our next song is 1 Point Perspective.
Dancing in my underpants. I'm gonna run for government. I'm gonna form a covers band and all. Back there by the baby grand, did Mr. Winter Wonderland say, "Come here, kid"?
So, 1 Point Perspective. When I took art classes in elementary school, I was never really very good at drawing or painting, and didn't really enjoy. I appreciate art, but I don't really enjoy like trying to produce art.
Right.
Loved 1 Point Perspective. Like I actually got a drafting table and would sit at home and just draw endless buildings and streets and stuff I really dug that concept. So it's interesting that I'm reading through the wiki as we're listening, and the reference in the song is to the cinematic technique used by Stanley Kubrick and Wes Anderson, and both of them were really big on each frame in their film looks like a work of art.
Right. Yeah, it really interesting thing about this song. The track is about dreams and ambitions of people have as children, and then they're often interrupted as life continues, and it's kind of like a conversation. And I think what a really cool little thing they have in here is at the end of some of the lines, they have somebody in the distance going, "Stop!" And think of it like
a telegram?
Yeah, Morse code.
Yeah.
Just they have the stops in there. And I think it's an interesting way of thinking of it. It's just like, stop, and similar to how that works. It's just like, oh, you have this idea, but nope, stop.
Nope, stop.
So I thought that was an interesting aspect to it. But, talking too about this song, it's kind of like the songs his dad used to play on the piano as a kid. It kind of sounds like that. So I like the influence. So our next track on the album is called American Sports, which is funny because there's an indie band called American Football. I doubt they have anything to do with each other, but I find that funny.
Did we mention them when we were doing sports, right?
Yeah, by Modern Baseball.
By Modern Baseball, yeah.
Yeah, there's a there's a parody band called Canadian Softball, and it's supposed to be a play on American football and modern baseball. I thought it was funny.
Interesting.
So American Sports.
And I never thought, not in a million years, that I'd meet so many Lolas. Can I please have my money back? My virtual reality mask is stuck.
So different vibe on that song.
Yeah.
Definitely. And it's am I reading this right? That the perspective of the song is supposed to be somebody talking to their love interest? A conversation between Turner and a potential romantic interest. Okay. Which is funny because one of the first lines of the song, so when you gaze at planet Earth from outer space, does it wipe that stupid look off your face? So if this is a potential romantic interest, I think he just shit that on the first line of the song.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, maybe we're reading different explanations, different interpretations here, but in American Sports, Turner takes a look into the dystopian future and compares present-day obsessions to the habits of the moon's fictional inhabitants. I mean, if we're talking about Lola here, that I'd meet so many Lolas is a line. I never thought in a million years I'd meet so many Lolas.
Mm-hmm.
But again,
a loaded sentence right there.
there's just this is such a dense album with a lot of dense lyrics. Like usually when we look on Genius and we're breaking down lyrics, like there's groups, like the whole verse is explained out. This is line by line has something written down, you know. When you gaze at planet Earth from outer space, that's one line of something. Then does it wipe that stupid look off your, like every single thing. So there is just so much freaking detail in this album and thought that went into it that it makes breaking this down incredible.
Dense.
Very dense. I mean, I'd go line by line and talk about it, but we don't have time for that.
I know, right? Other people have done that. Go check out their stuff.
Yeah, go to
Telling
Genius.
you what we think of it.
So the next track, and I think this is probably my favorite track on the album, it's Tranquility Base Hotel Casino. It's the title track. Pretty good. I know this was the first track I heard off this album when it came out a couple years ago. So let's give it a whirl.
Tranquility Base Hotel and Casino. Mark speaking. Please tell me how may I direct your call. This magical thinking feels as if it really...
So this song, I think, is suggestive of some sort of political imagery kind of thing going on. I think that trying to get the exact word here, but Alex Turner said Tranquility Base in reality is the site of the first lunar landing, but whether we actually talking about a sort of hotel casino complex on the moon or not is debatable. He says he likes the idea of a record being named after a place. It isn't something that he's done before, but he does consider many of his favorite records almost being like places you can visit. But there was another quote he said just about this that I wanted to mention. I thought it was interesting. So with this political imagery idea, well, when you suggest the idea of doing something political, I immediately think of the Windsor knot that you have to tie your tie in for a press conference. I get lost in that imagery. Though that might not be the knot anymore, even. If we're really going to move things forward, we've got to change the knot. We could run on that. So I'm having a hard time wrapping my head around exactly what he's talking about, but yeah. I find interesting that he's likening this imagery, this political, imagery that he's using to a freaking knot that you tie your tie with.
Windsor knot, yeah. I did really like the line referencing the moon's side boob.
Yes, kiss me underneath the moon's side boob.
Yeah, because it's a pretty cool image.
Yeah, boobs around, moons around, satellites around,
and the side boob just doesn't get the appreciation that it deserves.
But there's just so much imagery in the song. Jesus in the day spa, filling out the information form, Mama Got Her Hair Done just popping out to sing a protest song. Like just right off the bat, it's whoa, okay. Now I've been on a bender back to that prophetic esplanade where I ponder all the questions, but just to manage to miss the mark.
Yeah, it's dense.
It's dense, and it's hard for us, I think, in a couple minutes that we're here just editorializing what we listen to break down the density of this album.
Yeah, and it's interesting because it made me think of The Doors, who we probably will never discuss an album on this show because there's really nothing esoteric about The Doors. However, having said that, one of the things that Jim Morrison was guilty of, he was a poet, in addition to being a singer and songwriter. And one of the things he was guilty of was using a lot of personal metaphors, which usually in creative writing they try to steer you away from because it's almost impossible for your audience to decipher if you have private symbolism and metaphors that you're using as opposed to stuff that the collective consciousness understands. Not saying that's the case here, but it sort of reminds me of that there's a lot going on here.
Yeah, exactly. A lot to unpack here. So our next song is called Golden Trunks.
Last night when my psychic subcommittee sang to me in its scary voice, you slowly dropped your eyelids. When true love takes a grip, it leaves you without.
Bendable figures. Were you talking about points of articulation here? Action figures.
Oh, maybe. I think he's speaking metaphorically about specific political leaders, specifically our president.
Yeah, leader of the free world. Reminds you of a wrestler wearing tight golden trunks.
This song sounded to me, and I don't know if we said this on mic or now or not, but it sounds like Pet Sounds, the Beach Boys, but like an ominous version. Like, wouldn't it be nice, but in a minor key?
Interesting. I didn't see that.
And I love Pet Sounds. I think it's a great album. But
I'm just, no matter what your feelings are about Trump, nobody wants to see the man in tight golden trunks. I'm going to say that.
I'm just picturing like Eric Cartman at a pool party. Yeah. That's what I'm picturing.
I don't think even Melania wants to see that.
There's a lot to unpack there. I really enjoyed that song. I don't think I've actually listened to it in its entirety. So
very, very moody and atmospheric. I mean, all these tracks are sort of atmospheric, but that definitely was. And it's interesting that that's sort of the love song on the album, but had a dark vibe out it going on.
Yeah. And Alex Turner said in an interview, he said that the whole song is about a conversation between himself and somebody that he's falling for. The character in the song who he's singing to, that's something from her imagination that may have come out of her sense of humor or something like that. So, yeah.
Okay.
Interesting. So our next track is 4 out of 5.
Lights. Take it easy for a little while. Come and stay with us. It's such an easy flight. You new places keep on popping up since the Exodus. It's all getting gentrified. I put a taqueria on the roof. It was well reviewed.
Okay, before we go any further, I want to take a minute to talk about the awesome folks at Anchor. If you haven't heard about Anchor, it's the easiest way. In fact, it's the way that we make a podcast. Let me explain.
It's free.
There are creation tools that allow you to record and edit your podcast right from your phone or computer.
Anchor will distribute your podcast for you, so it can be heard on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and many more.
And you can make money from your podcast. Best part, no minimum listenership.
Ooh. It's everything you need to make a podcast in one place.
It's so cool. We found the service. We started using it. We're making podcasts.
Yeah, making podcasts, making money, having a good time.
So listen, you want to get you out there. You want to be heard. Download the free Anchor app or go to anchor.fm to get started.
Thank you. So I just pulled up this Pitchfork interview with Alex Turner. It's a track-by-track interview about the album. And what the interviewer says, this track has a sci-fi bent. It's about a taqueria on the moon that's called the information action ratio, which is a reference to the idea of how we have so much knowledge at our fingertips, but don't quite know what to do with it. And Alex responds saying, I lifted it from this book called Amusing Ourselves to Death. I was attracted to the idea as soon as I heard that phrase. Even though it was in this book from 1985, it still seemed relevant. More relevant than it probably was when the guy made it up. I sang it to the tape recorder and was making stuff up one day, and I ended up falling in place where the implication was it was the name of this taco shop on the roof of the hotel complex. I love that so much.
Interesting. Yeah, it's like a good portion of the song is like adverts for.
Yeah, it's basically an advertisement for the 4 out of 5, 4 stars out of 5 for this hotel on Sea Tranquility. That's where Apollo landed.
So if any of you are following our Instagram account now, the strange post that I made on September 12th will make sense now.
So I like the title of our next song, and that is The World's First Ever Monster Truck Front Flip. Read that again. The world's first ever monster truck front flip. Now, while you're maybe you're listening to the 20-second clip, maybe you're going to listen to the whole track and listen along. Maybe you're one of those people that likes to do that. Either way, take a second, pause this episode, and Google that.
You push the button and we'll do the rest. The exotic sound of data storage.
So the reason why I said to Google this is because Alex Turner said in an interview with Entertainment Weekly that this was verbatim a news story, and he was unable to resist clicking on it, so it was a total clickbait title. And he's like, I have to name it after it. So I tried to look up some videos of this monster truck front flip, but there's like 90 of them now. So
Well, once you break the record,
yeah.
it's all downhill from there.
Oh, there it is. It's O'Donnell at the something. Yeah, first ever Monster Jam truck front flip. Yeah, there it is. So
here's the thing. I know I've said this before. I'm not sure if I've said it on our show before, but if you had not seen Mike Judge's movie Idiocracy, you need to, as soon as this podcast is over, stop what you were then planning on doing and go watch Idiocracy. Talk about de-evolution.
yeah. So this song, actually, I should have read this when I was earlier. The song is probably named after Lee O'Donnell successfully accomplishing the world's first monster truck flip at the 2017 Monster Jam World Finals. But this song describes people's infatuation with their own devices and how technology offers up ease of access while potentially making us dumber in the process, which I think is a common theme throughout the album. Like, the more that we dive into it, it's not just surface level, this is a resort on the moon. There's a lot more aspects, like we mentioned at the beginning. We talk about consumerism, talk about politics, religion, and technology. I think a lot more of those elements are definitely showing themselves as we go through, and it's clearer now, kind of, that you can understand those concepts coming into play as we move through it. So it's interesting, for sure. So our next track is Science Fiction.
Religious iconography, giving you the creeps. Feel rubber band, disco lizard, tongue along your cheek. The rise of the machine.
All right, so when we first looked at the description of this album, they said there was a comparison made to Nick Cave.
Yeah.
And to date, listening to this album, I haven't heard anything that even slightly resembles Nick Cave. This song totally did have a Bad Seeds vibe to it.
Good.
The music more than the lyrics.
Yeah, I think anything we're going to find musically anything would be related to Nick Cave in that realm compared to lyrically, for sure. Because this is a unique thing.
Yeah.
I honestly, when I first heard this album, I thought Alex Turner and the entire band was going through some sort of crisis. Because you listen to maybe at the end of this, we'll listen to one song from a different album for perspective. I think it's interesting when we listen to an album like this and listen to like what they first came. That's what we're going to do. We're going to listen to I Bet You Look Good on the Dance Floor at the end of this album.
Okay.
Because it's a completely different vibe. And I was like, are you going through some sort of crisis? I don't know what's going on here. This is a rock band, believe it or not. I don't know what happened.
Okay. They're working some stuff out.
Yeah. I don't hate it so far. Quantitative easing.
I do really like the line, I want to stay with you the way some science fiction does. Which was interesting that line sticks with me when I read in the sidebar that he said himself that he really hasn't read very much science fiction.
Yeah, I'm not into science fiction at all. Like, this is the closest thing to science fiction I've listened to or seen or consumed and enjoyed.
I am a fan of science fiction.
Yeah. Oh,
and
well,
they're
Star Wars, but
yeah. Although Star Wars really falls more into fantasy,
Yeah.
than that's like I like hard science fiction, which is like actual science fiction.
yeah, I'd say Star Trek is more sci-fi than Star Wars is.
Yes, a really good example of contemporary science fiction would be, and I'm gonna forget the name of the show. Oh, The Expanse on Amazon Prime. Hard science based in
Black
actual
Mirror,
science.
so that's sci-fi.
Yes.
Yeah,
yes.
it's like a dystopian society kind of thing. Every episode incorporates some sort of rogue technology.
Yeah.
So-
But one of the things about science fiction is generally what they're doing is exploring contemporary issues through the lens of something futuristic.
Yeah, well, that's exactly what Black Mirror does.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And
So, I
so
mean,
that
it's
idea of, and there's science fiction you read, and afterwards, like, it really kind of messes with your head a bit.
right.
So I like that line. Like, you don't want to mess with the girl's head.
Yeah.
Because that's not how you want to get in there. But you want to stick with her and have her think about you afterwards. Like, that's cool.
Yeah, I like that. So our next track on the album is "She Looks Like Fun." That's an interesting follow-up to this track.
She looks like fun.
Smile like you got a straw in something tropical. I've got the party plugged right into my skull. Wayne Manor, what a memorable NYE.
She looks like fun.
She looks like fun. Yeah, so it's kind of reading some of the annotations on this, and it seems like this song is largely about his girlfriend's Instagram account. And I didn't bother reading into the whole story, but apparently at some point she actually quit Instagram because fans of the band were giving her such a hard time.
Right.
So with that in mind, the line "she looks like fun," I can see like somebody, if they're checking out your girlfriend's Instagram, be like, "Oh, she looks like fun. Yeah.
Ugh.
Look at the stuff that she's doing."
Some guys are really piggy.
Well, and it's funny. So, a song that's obviously critical of social media and the technology around it on an album about technology, like just take the concept of the album, A Casino on the Moon, obviously involves technology for us to get there.
Right.
But I think this is what we see with any sort of technological advance, especially like social media. The purpose of it and its potential is unlimited, but what people actually use it for is puerile and
Yeah. Well, and actually, to the point of "she looks like fun," I like the line in here. There's no limit to the length of the dickheads we can be,
yeah.
and it's like I think that's a good metaphor for the swineness.
Yeah, and I know I have complained probably almost every episode that we've done about just what a cesspool Facebook is.
Yeah, especially town Facebook groups.
Oh, and like as much as you sit there and look at your town's page and think, what a bunch of racist, ignorant assholes live in my town, that's every single town and
absolutely.
city and community.
So,
Get off my soapbox.
so our next song is the penultimate song, and it is "Bat Phone." I don't know if that's like Batman, Bat Phone, but
Well, this last song had a reference to Wayne Manor, so
So-
there's a Batman theme going on.
yeah, I wouldn't discount it. So, "Bat Phone."
I want an interesting synonym to describe this thing that you say we're all grandfathered in. I'll use the search engine.
So the man's a Batman fan.
Totally. And like I just said off mic, like there's an article, "The Uncanny Parallel Between Alex Turner and Bruce Wayne," which I'm actually going to pop up while we're sitting here talking about it. But interesting. The more we read about it, there's a lot more Batman parallels than you'd expect from this type of an album.
Yeah. There's interesting metaphors in here, too. The one line that really did stick with me was, I like that, "I launch my fragrance called Integrity. I sell the fact that I can't be bought." It's cute.
Yeah, really interesting. Really interesting. Like, again, with this whole album, it's just dense metaphors, interesting metaphors, unique for certain. So, love
Seems
it.
to be kind of railing against technology and its role in social media.
Yeah, definitely. So our last song on the album is The Ultra Cheese. I love the title. It's very interesting.
We'll be there at the back of the bar, in a booth like we usually were. Every time there was a rocket launch.
So I didn't see any comments made about this on either of the places I was looking. This whole album has definitely had a glam rock vibe to it, sort
Yeah.
of Bowie-esque. This song totally reminded me of late John Lennon.
Oh yeah, totally. This is my favorite song on the album now that I've actually listened to it, and has some really fantastic musical elements in here that, and I almost got like a Pink Floyd kind of vibe going with it. Like not that real psychedelic kind of thing with that maybe their earlier work, but maybe more like The Wall in some sense. I think if it was in a major key.
Yeah, or Dark Side of the Moon, like Eclipse, Dark Side of
Exactly.
the Moon.
That that's more of what I was thinking about.
It's the outro. So interestingly enough, now that you bring that up, and I'm thinking about Lennon at the same time, the song is called Ultra Cheese. I think he's saying the song is ultra cheesy.
Oh, 100%,
It's a sort of
yeah.
motif, you
Yeah,
know?
yeah.
And I'm noticing, I think people are missing that point in trying, as often is the case on Genius, in trying
People are
to-
missing the point, yeah.
trying to interpret what that ultra cheese means. It's
Yeah.
the song is ultra cheese.
I think sometimes it takes the innocence of a person to understand that there's just not such a deep meaning to every song. You know, like just look at the title, and I think he's telling us point blank. And like right now, we're talking about he's reminiscing about his past and the impact that music had on his life. And yeah, these things are all important elements, but this is just a cheesy song that he threw together to wrap up the album. Like it just,
Yeah.
that's what it is. And
And he brings it all home. It was done in one take, in a live take. There's,
Yeah.
You can see this whole album is almost all just him, and
Right.
then this he's got a bunch of other people coming in too. So
yeah,
it's,
I think it's good.
yeah, it's well done, well done.
So, like I mentioned, we're going to listen to I Bet You Look Good on the Dance Floor from their first album. Pure reason being is this is esoteric in and of itself for its concept. But what was surprising to me when I heard the tracks off this album for the first time was because it was such a departure from what they've done in the past. And they did have this genesis that kind of got them there, but just listening to their first album to this, it's a completely different thing. This I Bet You Look Good on the Dance Floor is probably one of their more popular songs. A lot of people would know it, but if you're not familiar with them, it's a good listen to. So we'll listen to that.
Well, I bet that you look good on the dance floor. I don't know if you're looking for romance or I don't know what you're looking for. I said I bet that you look good on the dance floor. Dancing to electro pop like a robot from 1984. Said from 1984.
So that song's a departure.
Yeah, just a bit. And so that's their standard, like.
I wouldn't even say it's standard. I'd say that that's where they started, and they kind of, I'll call it devolved into the lounge pop kind of vibe. The album that came before Tranquility Base Hotel Casino was called AM, and that was like a weird mix between this kind of stuff and what we just listened to. So they kind of got to that point. I like this album that song's on, and the one that comes after that. I don't even remember. Your Favorite Worst Nightmare, I think, is the name of the song, the album. But Arctic Monkeys is cool. If you want a diverse range of music and it's still the same band, give them a listen. Like it's really worth it, I'd say. If you're into the local scene, I think there's a lot to learn from them as a group, and musically speaking, they're simple but complex at the same time. So give them a listen. I think it's interesting. Give this album a listen if you liked it.
Yeah, that was an interesting journey to
Tranquility Base Hotel Casino. So, yeah, Esoterica, the podcast.
The podcast, where we keep things esoteric.
So, let's see. What do we have coming up? Actually, I don't think we know what we have coming up yet.
Yeah, so a little note. We had pretty ambitious plans for what we wanted to do this season, and we've pivoted a bit, partly because there's a lot of work involved in it, and life has a way of getting in the way. But we've also, I think we came up with a pretty cool idea for next season that we want to
Definitely.
focus our energies on. So it'll probably be more album reviews, but
Yeah,
we're
for season 2. But
not exactly sure what's coming up next week, which
no.
is fun for everybody.
Yeah. Sometimes it's a surprise, sometimes it's not. So that'll be fun. But hey, check out Esoterica, thepodcast.com. Look for updates. Buy a t-shirt.
Please, for the love
Please.
of God, buy a
I have
t-shirt.
I have like 15 or 10 or whatever sitting in my room, and I don't want them anymore. So I want you to want them. I want you to want me.
Yeah. Listen, there's two ways this is going to work out. Either you're going to get yourself a cool t-shirt that's great and comfortable, or 5-10 years from now, when you're watching one of those commercials with the starving kids in Ethiopia, you'll see them wearing Esoterica shirts.
Yeah.
So let's not have that happen.
Help us out. So tune in next Wednesday for another episode of Esoterica, the podcast.
Check our website for updates on all our various social media.
And until next time.
Stay esoteric.